All right, what's up, guys? I am an avid herpetologist, and I'm coming back to you with more Digimon TCG content. I had just posted a deck profile for a black-based Machinedramon deck a couple of days ago, and I got some inquiries wanting to know a little bit more about the archetype and the way that the deck plays. So this video is meant to be kind of an in-depth study guide, if you will, about the archetype of Machinedramon as a whole. As you can see, I've got 4 eggs here on the screen. These are going to represent the 4 bases that Machinedramon decks tend to be built around. Now, Machinedramon decks are very unique in the sense that there isn't really one set way you want to be building this particular deck. You'll notice with a lot of archetypes, common ones right now, things like Mother D Reaper, Gallantmon, X-Antibody, there tends to be kind of a script for how you want that deck to be built. And while the core of a Machinedramon deck is going to stay fairly similar, the bases that you're building and the way that you choose to go about building that bases can vary widely. Myself, I've historically run a blue-based Machinedramon deck, though still not a traditional blue-based Machinedramon deck, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. We're going into pretty good detail today about the reasons that you may want to run a particular base for your Machinedramon deck. We'll be talking about the positives and the negatives of each, because there are positives and negatives to each build. That doesn't mean that I don't think any particular base is going to be more or less effective. I'll kind of be talking about the reasons that I play the build that I play. Obviously, as a black-based player, I'm going to be a little bit biased in that regard, but I'm going to try to highlight some of the ups and the downs that each build has to offer. As we're going, I'll kind of explain the card choices and the tech options that each build has. And once I've gone through each, we're also going to do a little bit of a deck tech and kind of playstyle guide with the particular build that I myself run. I'll show you a couple of test hands just to give you an idea of the kind of mindset that you want to be in when piloting this deck, if you are looking to pilot it effectively or just in general improve your ability to play a Machinedramon archetype. So going from left to right is, in my personal opinion, don't want to make any enemies here, but this is my personal opinion for the effectiveness, from least to most effective, that you're going to want to be playing Machinedramon in the current BT9 format. Moving forward, I do think black base is going to be the way that you're going to want to construct this deck, and I'll explain a little bit more as to why. My deck profile did go into pretty good detail about the reasons that I built my deck the way that I did. I think a lot of the newer support does tend to lend itself to black base better so than the other two, but as I mentioned, we're gonna go into talking about that and why. To begin with, we're going to start with discussing our purple bases. Now, purple bases are definitely the least common from what I've seen of Machinedramon decks. There are some people who play them just because there are some really cool synergies. Purple does tend to lend itself to more graveyard loading strategies, but the synergies and the consistency that you'll see behind those builds don't seem to make up to par, in my personal opinion. It feels like, especially nowadays with the newer support, that purple just kind of feels like a worse black base, in the sense that a lot of the things you're going to be doing, you could also be doing in black, but you're going to do them more consistently, and in a lot of cases, you're going to do it a lot stronger. The main draw to running purple bases that I've seen is specifically going to be playing rookies that have on deletion effects to draw and discard cards, and playing copies of Eismon's Scatter Mode, which on delete lets you draw 3 cards and then trash 2. Which, yes, is very synergistic for a Machinedramon build, but as I mentioned, I think there's just better, more consistent ways to be doing that. So purple is not my personal choice. Not a huge fan of purple, but more power to you if that's the route that you decide to go. Moving on to red. Red has become a little bit more popular in recent months, just because the last couple of sets have seen a lot of black and red champions, which helps you bridge the gap between red rookies and your level 5s, which is something the deck really likes to do. I talked a lot about that in my black-based Machinedramon deck profile. The rookie of choice that you're going to typically be running the red base for is going to be Promo Guilmon. Promo Guilmon has an on-attack that is just to draw a card. So you basically are going to Evo your Guilmons on top of a Digimon. Digimon says as long as the card has the name Guilmon or Growlmon in its name, on attacking once per turn you can draw a card. So you just Evo into Guilmon, you're going to swing, draw 2 cards, and that's kind of the extent of what your rookie base is going to be trying to do. Unfortunately, this strategy can be a little bit more glass cannon-y, just because unlike jamming Vmon in the blue base, when you're swinging in with your Guilmon, he's probably going to die. So you need to really basically be able to make the most of the cards that you're drawing, which you're probably going to be able to do, but also you're going to not really have a consistent form of aggression if that's the route you decide to go. But as I mentioned, we do now have new like black and red champions, things like Blocker Monochromon and Cyclonemon that are able to help bridge that gap. You can Digivolve on top of Guilmon in the miracle scenario where he happens to survive a swing, get an additional card for the Evo, and try to bridge up into your level 5s. Having a blocker in the form of Monochromon can be helpful. I, again, think that there are more useful ways to use that role, though. I mentioned in my deck profile video that we're playing things like Gardramon in our EX1 Gardramon, specifically in our level 4 slots. The main reason we do that, though, is not just for the blocker body, it's for the incredible inheritable. Having a blocker body is nice, but it needs to be able to be more proactive. Something that I've found this format is that trying to play a more defensive game isn't really going to get you where you need to go. I'm going to go over more of those options as we get into the black base a little bit more. I'm going to be talking about the cards that I don't include or cards that you could potentially include in your list and kind of go over positives and negatives again. But I personally think that if you're going to be going routes where you're looking for blockers, you're better off just going black because, number one, black has rookie blockers that you can utilize, but Gardramon is, in general, just going to be the best level 4 blocker that the deck could ever possibly see. The other good reason that people do tend to go red, though, is going to be option cards. I've seen a lot of people try to make use of Fireball, which is just a generic 2-memory to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, or if you cannot delete a Digimon with this effect, you can just draw 2 cards. Basically, 2-memory to draw 2. Again, I don't necessarily think this is the right way to go here. There's definitely benefits. I'm not going to say it's not a bad thing to be doing. However, I do think that just paying 2-memory to draw 2 cards and not actually change your board state is a little bit lackluster. This is why I have this in kind of the third most effective spot here in my base list. You do get other really nice option cards, things like Crimson Blaze. You could potentially run Gaia Forces. But the big reasons I see a lot of people running it is options like Fireball, a Delicate Plan, Heir of Dragons, which are completely serviceable. But again, I think that the black base has kind of developed now and has enough support that you don't really need those when you could be playing other sources of draw power that are going to do more for you rather than just drawing a couple of cards. All right, moving on to the most popular by far base that Machinedramon has. And yes, I do think I'm saying it is the most popular. Whether or not it's, in my opinion, the strongest does not matter. It is definitely the most popular, is going to be blue. Now, generally, blue is going to be run for 2 major reasons, and that is going to be this rookie right here and this option card. These are the cards that Machinedramon has kind of developed its reputation around. The general idea is that you get some low-to-the-ground aggro thanks to jamming Vmon, who can generally swing into security completely safe unless you happen to hit removal in their security, which is, of course, unfortunate, but the eggs you're running are going to make it so every time you're jamming Vmon swings, you're drawing a card. So each turn you would swing in, you would draw your card. Vmon is likely to survive as long as they don't have a blocker, and then you're going to just continue to accrue value until they can get rid of the Vmon. This is actually the build that I used to run. In my earlier conceptions of the deck, I was on blue base 100%. I had the Demi Vmons, I had the Vmons. I, however, did not play Kaisernail, and I'm going to be talking about why here in just a minute. I did, however, especially during the BT7 format, my bread and butter opened. So if I was beginning a game, the thing that I wanted to open with best was going to be a Vmon that I can Digivolve in the raising area, and I wanted to slap down a Machinedramon. This was a format where a lot of the aggression was more low to the ground, and Machinedramon was a very effective wall during that format. The ability to block multiple attacks basically just helped your Vmon get more value over multiple turns, and ultimately what you wound up with was a lot of chip damage that your opponent was going to have a hard time getting rid of. However, in the more current formats, Machinedramon is definitely not as effective as he used to be. I'll still be talking a little bit more about Machinedramon once we get into the black base, but I definitely don't think he's nearly as helpful as he used to be, which is why my current build actually doesn't run any copies, even in the sideboard of Machinedramon. I think his time may come back later on. Again, formats change. Cards are going to see more or less relevance, but I currently don't think Mechanori is super great, which is also one of the reasons that I'm kind of off the Vmon game. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit briefly about Kaiser Nail, because this is the reason people tend to tech, as I mentioned, the blue base is jamming Vmon aggro and Kaiser Nail plays. So Kaiser Nail is a 4-memory option card that lets you take any Digimon from any Digivolution source that you have in play and play it as its own Digimon. The very obvious big synergy here is that if you have a Machinedramon in play, it's going to have its sources. You can Digivolve on top of that Machinedramon with a level 7 or a Chaosdramon, and after that, you can Kaiser Nail, get the Machinedramon back, and then you're going to grab a fresh set of Digivolution sources that you can then kind of put down on top of the Machinedramon. I apologize for the glare. I'm doing the best I can here to try to prevent it. But we want to make sure we are able basically to replay that Machinedramon, and then you get memory back. So if you put 5 new Cyborgs underneath Machinedramon off of Kaiser Nail, you gain 5 memory, and you actually use Kaiser Nail not only to drop a fresh mega level body, but you're also actually going to go memory positive and gain a memory. It's a very high ceiling. Obviously, the problem is it's also a very low floor. What I mean by that is in order for you to properly utilize Kaiser Nail, and this is a deck that can properly utilize Kaiser Nail, you need to already have a Machinedramon in play. You need to evolve on top of that Machinedramon, and you need to actually have the Kaiser Nail to drop. After you've done all of that setup, once you actually play the Machinedramon, you need another 5 Cyborgs, either in your trash or in your hand, before you can actually go memory positive. And there's going to be situations where you're going to see this Kaiser Nail, and it's just going to kind of sit there in your hand for most of, if not the entire game. The unfortunate reality is, even though it is a very powerful play that you can bring out, it also has the potential to just not do anything. Yes, you can potentially, if you're building stacks, bring other things out. If you evo onto Vmon, or if you evo onto a champion, you can bring them back. So, it's not always going to be completely dead. But I think, again, this deck is developing in a direction where it has such brutal card efficiency and such mega efficient digging tools and threats that I feel like you don't really need to go this route. I think that one of the big reasons people are actually sleeping on this deck right now is because most people just kind of assume that Machinedramon is the Megazoo deck. You want to play a bunch of level 7s and Kaiser Nails and go for these big, extravagant plays. And you will absolutely win games that way, 100%. But you're also going to have those games where you do just wind up bricking. I have never run a whole lot of level 7s outside of a few Alter S's in the earliest versions of this deck at all. There's going to be times where you either have Machinedramon and need to keep Machinedramon in play, or you just don't have the Machinedramon and you don't have anything to evo those onto. Level 7s tend to be very, very bricky, which is why I've always kind of preferred to go the more consistent route and just have smoother curves. There's also the argument I have long since made for Machinedramon decks that Machinedramon is just a good enough boss monster. You don't need to build on top of it a whole bunch. Let Machinedramon sit and play and just be Machinedramon. He's really good at just being Machinedramon. You don't need to evo on top of him. Chaosdramon has the option to evo on top of him when you need it, but almost every game I have ever played, when I have a Machinedramon in play, I don't want to do anything else with it other than just let him do what he's doing. Do your blocker reboots, get your awesome on-attack inheritables. He does so much by himself that I think you don't really need the level 7s, and I think if people start to migrate away from this Megazoo mentality, the deck can actually be incredibly relevant in the meta to the point of even taking down some events. But I guess time will only tell, as this is a very difficult deck to pilot. Even when you do get good at this deck, there's going to be times where there's a lot of decisions you have to make over the course of the game, and one of them can do you in. That's how I lost my final round on Monday, was just making a couple mistakes, and that was all it took. But anyways, we'll talk a little bit more about the benefits, because there are other benefits to running a blue base. To begin with, on my personal build that I was running before black base, instead of running level 7s and Kaiser Nails, I use those spots for other blue rookies. Blue has a lot of very effective floodgates. Specifically, the two that I tended to run were Syakomon and Madoki Betamon. I know I'm a little biased. Betamon's one of my favorite Digimon, but running those floodgates can actually be very helpful. Machinedramon's always struggled with speed as one of its bigger weaknesses, where it can't seem to close games out, and the opponent's decks just tend to be faster. Running Floodgates does tend to help slow the opponent down quite a bit, which can be very helpful for closing that gap. And Blue Base did admittedly get a nice tool for blue bases in BT8 in the form of Hookmon. Hookmon is a blue and black champion Digimon that is 2 to evolve, 5 to play, and 5,000 DP. This helps you bridge the gap in Evo on top of your rookie base, regardless of whether or not you're playing EX1 Haguru or your blue rookies. So it kind of helps bridge that gap. Another cool thing you can do is you can swing in for jamming with Vmon, get a free check, draw your card, and then Evo on top of Hookmon for another draw. That'll also make your that particular stack a little harder to get rid of on the next turn. Hookmon does also have an inheritable, which I suppose can be relevant. When attacking, you can also trash the bottom Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon. I mean, it's text. It's better than just being blank. It can come up in certain situations where you'll help choke out card draw from eggs on the opposing side of the table and things of that nature. But in general, not super relevant, but it is something to make note of. And lastly, another big benefit the blue base does have, a good reason to run it. Of course, we're talking about options. We've already discussed Kaiser Nail, but blue also has some of the best removal in the game right now in the form of things such as V-Wing Blade and Cocytus Breath. These options that are able to bounce opposing stacks, which gets around a lot of deletion prevention, including being really good against Machinedramon himself, are really nice, especially in OTK metas, where they may have deletion protection. Things like Orumon is not quite as prevalent now as it was last format, but getting around those inability to be deleted effects can be really helpful. I ran copies of V-Wing Blade in my main board while I was on blue base. It did save me quite a few times. These are just kind of things to consider if you are interested in playing a blue base. Combinations, ratios, all of those things, they do vary. But anyways, yep, that's gonna do it for blue base. And now we're gonna talk about a build that I've already done a deck profile on, but we're gonna go kind of expanding a little bit more on ways that you can build black base. I'm gonna go ahead and clear off some space here because I do have quite a bit to talk about with this. So I'm going to use Hotmon, of course, as my egg of choice here, but eggs can, of course, change. I've seen people omit Hotmon entirely and just run copies of Pagumon, which is completely fine. Got my copy of Pagumon right here. But we're going to talk about some of the other things that black base is able to do that kind of diversifies it from other options. To begin with, we're going to start talking about the rookies that I already run. So we have 2-drop Hagurumon, we have 4-drop Blocker Commandramon, and we have the most important rookie that every Machinedramon build really is going to want to run, which is EX1 Hagurumon. Now, I've already talked a lot about these guys, so I'm not going to go into too deep of detail with these guys. Just suffice to say that as Machine and Cyborg bodies, they synergize very highly with Kazu, which I basically structured my entire deck around. I think Kazu is easily the greatest tool this deck has received in a very, very long time. I think Kazu is an absolutely incredible card. And if you build around it, it will 100% run away with the games for you. Its ability to dig, its ability to prevent you from getting memory choked is important. So you want to make sure that you have the option of getting machines and cyborgs in your battle area during your main phase as consistently as you can. One of the big reasons that I think black base is, of course, going to be vitally necessary for doing that strategy is black is really the only color that is able to hide your machine or rookie, your machines or cyborgs in your raising area. That is going to come up a lot. There are still going to be games, of course, where you've promoted and your board gets wiped. It's unfortunate, you hate to see it, but it is going to happen. But that's really the only scenario you have to worry about. The problem with other bases is if you want to run Kazu, and I have seen people try to kind of make hybrid builds where you get the benefits of black while also using the bases for other colors, not being able to hide your machine or cyborg in your raising area, it can really bite you in the butt a lot, more often than you might expect it to. If you're stuck hard playing all of your machines and cyborgs, it's going to be hard to get there. That's just the unfortunate reality. And there's going to be benefits. I've mentioned a lot of the benefits of playing other colored bases, but it's something you need to keep in mind. If you decide to go with a blue base, you need to recognize that Kazu is not necessarily going to be as effective for you as it would be for a full black base. That's not going to say you can't see success with it. Like I said, you're going to see success and you're going to see failure regardless of the base that you're building. I think black base does have a slightly lower ceiling, debatably, than blue base does, not being able to do Kaiser Nail plays. When you can pull off a full Kaiser Nail combo, it's going to feel absolutely great. but it's about how consistently you can do that. Do you want to play a good Kaiser Nail play, 1 in 5 games, or do you want to successfully evo up into a powerful level 5 or a good Chaosdramon almost every game, 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 games? That's kind of what I'm aiming for. On that note, though, if you do want to kind of lean a little bit away from Kazu, because you don't have to play 4 copies of Kazu. You can build your deck in different ways. There are other options that you have. Chikurimon is going to be one of the biggest ones I hear people suggesting. Chikurimon is a pretty great rookie. Of course, it's got that security effect where if you check it in security, you de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. Now, if you watch my Machinedramon deck profile, you know how high I am on the de-digivolve mechanic. It will absolutely steal the game for you a large portion of the time when it comes up. The main reason that I am not running Chikuri now, I have run it in the past, is again just wanting to make sure I have cyborgs and machines. Chikurimon is a mine. It is not a machine or cyborg, so it is not going to proc all of your machine synergies. It's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You don't have to have all machines and cyborgs, but I personally choose to for the most part. The only Digimon in my entire deck that are not machine and cyborgs are 2 copies of Death Xmon. I want to make sure that I have a machine or a cyborg available to me at all times. So if I digivolve a Chikurimon in my raising area, and I have a Kazu in play, and I don't have a champion to digivolve on top of that, well, if your board gets wiped, you're kind of out of luck. You're not going to be able to get that extra memory from Kazu, and recovering can be a lot more difficult. There is actually another rookie that I've kind of played around with running, and that is Kokuamon, who is actually a machine. So this guy does have some synergies with your deck. He has an effect in play where all turns players cannot ignore Digivolution requirements. I'm sure there is something relevant out there that this can help stop. I know I've thought of things in the past where it's like, okay, well, maybe it can do this. I'll be honest with you guys, I really don't think it's not a very effective floodgate. It doesn't stop a whole heck of a lot. It's basically just there as icing. Ultimately, I was running 2 Kokuamon, and they got traded out for the 2 copies of 2-drop Hagurumon. I think just going ahead and taking that 1 cost off the play really does help the deck speed up. That 1 memory can be very meaningful in a lot of situations. It can help choke your opponent very well. There's nothing wrong with Kokuamon. If you've come up with situations where it becomes super relevant and you think that floodgate effect is helpful, by all means. Also, by all means, leave a comment down below. Remind me what interactions that's going to be stopping. But as far as other potential floodgate effect, preventing memory gain, reducing Digivolution costs, this is definitely not one of the stronger ones. It does have that machine synergy, though, so if that's what you're up for and you want to go for it, by all means, I'm not going to stop you. Next up, we're going to talk about some champions that I have run in the past, or I see a lot of other decks attempting to run. These are going to be the main 3. Now, I've already talked a little bit about Machinedramon. I think his relevance kind of rises and falls depending on the format. I think in our current format, where we have a lot of tall stacks, he's just not going to do as much for you. He is nice to be able to play for only a 4 cost on the same body that Gardramon has, that 6,000 power blocker body. The problem is he has 3 costs to evolve, and 3 is a lot more than 2. It may not seem like a lot more, but I promise it's a lot more. You're going to pass turn digivolving into Machinedramon more often than you are when you have a Gardramon. Just as one example, let's say you don't have a memory tamer and they choke you at 1. Well, if I have a Kazu in play, gaining a memory lets me digivolve onto Gardramon up without passing turn, and then I can digivolve again up into an ultimate. You can't do that with Machinedramon. You basically either need to have 2 Kazus or a memory setter in order to be able to digivolve him up, and it's just a lot more expensive than I think it's worth. I think in order to really want to run Machinedramon, you need to be in a format where there's a lot more low-to-the-ground aggro. And even the decks that are low to the ground, like Armor Rush, just don't really care about Machinedramon, unless, of course, you are running things that boost him. And that is completely possible. Maybe you decide that you want to run Tumblemon as an egg, or you want to run Inheritables that boost DP on your opponent's turn. There's a Toy Agumon in black that does that. That's perfectly fine, but you are going to want to kind of structure your deck around that. And for me personally, that's just not the route that I decided to go with the deck. These guys are also going to see a lot of play, your Numamon and your Nanimon. If you are on black base, you are going to want to play Numamon over Nanimon, just because Numamon is going to have the 1 cost Evo, but it also still has that option of playing for 3. If you are not on black base, when I was on blue base, I actually played a full play set of Nanimon. Nanimon is also 3 to play. It is 2 cost to evolve, so it's a little bit worse there, but it also has an effect where you can play it for free from security. While I was on blue base, I mentioned that I was on a much more aggressive, kind of low-to-the-ground aggro style build, and I actually took down quite a few local events, getting first place with a build just like that, and Nanimon was at 4 in that deck. But if you're going to be playing black base, you're better off just going ahead and getting the cheaper Evo. The playing from security is cool for like some surprise aggro now and then, but again, he got cut as soon as I kind of moved my build over towards building around Kazu. I would much rather play my other 1-drop Evo of Tankmon, where you keep those cyborg and machine synergies and have a nice beat stick body where you can even potentially trade for things, swinging into it and checking it in security. Checking a Nanimon in security and bringing it out is nice and all, but there's also situations where he just isn't impactful enough. But there's nothing necessarily wrong. Like I said, I want to make sure I'm being perfectly clear. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any particular Machinedramon build. You need to kind of build your deck for yourself and decide the direction that you want to take it in. So these cards may all be phenomenal in the build that you're working on. I don't want to discourage you in any way. I just want to kind of talk about the benefits and the downsides that each one of these cards are bringing. Obviously, I'm not running these cards. I'm working on explaining exactly why I'm choosing not to, but I know a lot of people in the Discord that I'm a part of do choose to play various cards from these lists for various reasons, and they see levels of success. It's honestly one of my favorite things about the Machinedramon build is that it's not solved. It's always open to innovation. You can find brand new spicy tech as new sets come out that you think work really well. So if that's something that you're interested in and you do find something spicy that you want to share, by all means, again, leave it in the comments below. I'm always interested in hearing about new ideas and tech options. Now, before we move on to our level 5 alternatives here, I'm going to take a moment to talk about a card I've actually had a shocking number of people ask me about, and that is this guy right here, EX2 Guardian. Please don't play this card. I'm just going to be honest with you. Please don't play this card. I personally don't think there's any redeeming qualities to this card that you can't find in other places. There are 2 other copies of Guardian that are strictly better than this card. You have EX1 Guardian and you have BT2 Guardian. Both of these cards are better, and I will explain why. So this BT2 Guardian is a 5 to play, has 4,000 base DP. It is 2 to evolve. So a little low on the DP, but it is still at least a reasonable Digivolution cost. It does have blocker, and it has an on-play effect where one of your Digimon gets plus 3,000 DP until the end of your opponent's turn. Which basically means if you have an empty board and you hard play him for 5, he is a 7,000 power defender until your opponent's next turn. That's fine. 7,000 is a good number. It's absolutely good for a blocker to have. You can also give it to other Digimon. So if you're worried about something particularly tall, you have, for instance, a Machinedramon in play, you can hard play this, give that 3,000 buff to Machinedramon, and now he's able to absorb a lot more. The other big thing that I will acknowledge is, yes, this Guardian is unique from the other 2. It is the only one that can attack. And yes, there is some situations where not having the ability to attack will matter. However, you need to kind of weigh the positives and negatives and how often you're going to care about each one. In the case of EX2 Guardian, I don't think the on-play is enough to justify anything. You can literally just play BT2 Guardian. It is 5 to play, 2 to evolve, and always has 7,000 DP. It can't attack, but you can just Digivolve for 2 into this, and it will always be a 7,000 power body. That is easily the largest body that you can currently get on a level 4 blocker, and there are going to be reasons that some people like to run BT2 Guardian for that reason. I don't think the inability to attack is worth swapping into EX2 Guardian just for that minor synergy. You're basically trading the consistent 7k DP for the option to attack, and I don't think that's worth it. And as I mentioned in my deck profile, I'm not playing either of these anyway. I personally think EX1 Guardian is far and away the best of the group. That inheritable, it just makes the world of difference. If you're playing a game where you want to be evolving up into your level 5s, you can't do better than EX1 Guardian. This card is absolutely insane, and when you build to get use out of that inheritable multiple turns in a row, there really is no better place to be. It is such an incredible card advantage engine. Okay, so I got off my soapbox. I had to address the EX2 Guardian. I have had so many people ask me about it, way more than I would have ever expected, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. So we're going to go ahead and talk about are level 5 Cyborgs. I'm going to take a second here to get the Cyborgs out of my own deck, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each one and why I'm running the ones that I'm running. But I'm also going to go over a lot of the other level 5 options that this deck has available. This is one of the spots where you're typically going to see Machinedramon decks have the most variability, just because your Cyborg lineup is going to vary depending on the format, your local meta. As metas shift and change, which Cyborgs are going to be the best for you, it's going to be constantly changing. It's never going to consistently be like, okay, I'm running these Cyborgs, so this is just going to be my build from here on. It doesn't really work that way. So basically, as metas shift and evolve, you're going to see different Cyborgs seeing different levels of relevance and use. So to begin, these are the Cyborgs that I personally am running. Now, these are not all of them. I'm running a total of 15, but I'm just going to show you the singles just to show you the card numbers, rather, of the cards that I am currently running. So I talked a little bit about each one already, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on these guys. The EX1 Cyborgs are just an absolute must. No matter what Machinedramon list you're running, some decks opt not to play Metal Mamemon, but you are always going to want to be playing at least a couple copies of Metal Tyrannomon and Andromon. Having access to Reboot and Blocker is vitally important. I have seen a lot of other lists that only run a single Andromon and actually run more copies of the structure deck Megadramon, which is also a blocker and heritable. Most of the time, the reason decks want to do that, though, is they want to Evo up into level 7s. As I've already mentioned a little bit, level 7s aren't really the direction I'm trying to go with this deck. I personally think they can be a bit bricky, and I like to avoid those. So I'm running a single copy of Megadramon and 2 copies of Andromon just because the generic nature of this literally doesn't matter. The only things I'm going to see this underneath are already machines, which means this Andromon is going to be a strict upgrade, because not only does it have the blocker inheritable for machines, but it also has that on Digivolve effect that lets you churn through your deck. But you can kind of adjust those ratios how you want. If you do decide to play level 7s, you may prefer more copies of Megadramon. But if you're trying to build bridges and actually build stacks up from eggs, Andromon is definitely going to be a strict upgrade to blocker Megadramon. We also have copies of Metal Greymon. I'm going to go through each of these because there's going to be different variations on different things here, and I want to talk about each one of them. So we're going to kind of go through here. Specifically Piercing. This card's kind of come in and out of my deck. I think it's a lot better in our current format. The ability to pop something 4,000 DP or less on swing is currently a lot more relevant, which is super nice. It also has that Piercing inheritable, which is really good with the option card, Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. Because this card exists now, I've started kind of building a lot of my inheritables around this card. You want to benefit from being more aggressive with this deck than defensive, in my personal experience. If you really decide that you want to be defensive, that's fine, but you're going to want to build around that defensive mindset. Speaking of which, I'll just go ahead and bring it out. One of the notable exclusions that I am not running anymore is Gigadramon. Gigadramon has an inheritable that gives you plus 2,000 DP on your opponent's turn. This card makes your blocking Machinedramons 13,000 DP, which is nice. It will help you trade with attacking Mastemons, fighter modes, and things like that. There's a couple of different reasons, though, that I've kind of started to shift away from the more defensive playstyle. One of the biggest reasons is, as I mentioned, Attack of the Heavy Mobile. When you put those underneath and you're blitzing Machinedramon in, this does nothing. It is literally a blank card when you are using that Blitz Machinedramon. I want my Blitz Machinedramon to be the scariest it can possibly be. And that means offensive, aggressive inheritables, which all of the ones that I'm running, at least to some degree, are going to be. If you do decide to build defensively, you're welcome to take that route. I personally think it's just not as good of a place to be. Right now, there's also a lot of cards that just easily swing over 1,300. Alphamons, D-Digivolve procs are still something that we need to be worried about, so you have to be careful about that. There's also going to be things like Dexmon, Crimson Mode. There's a lot of things that get over 13,000 right now without a whole lot of trouble. So just kind of be cautious. There's also a lot of suspend effects. Suspend effects do tend to still be one of Machinedramon's biggest weaknesses. Things that are able to come out and suspend down your blockers. Again, if that happens, then that 2,000 DP could have been literally anything else because it's not doing anything for you anymore. It'll help them maybe not be able to swing over it to remove its sources as easily, but most of the time, again, you're going to be perfectly fine just attaching materials and letting Machinedramon stick around let them expend as much as they want to get rid of that Machinedramon. Like, if they want to use all their resources to get rid of that, that's fine. While they're doing that, you can keep swinging away with your level 5 aggro. You can just drop another Machinedramon. If it gets low and they don't kill it, you just Chaos Dramon on top of it for 1 and get value back. Like, it's one of those things where you kind of have to adjust your mindset. And currently we're in a position where I think being more aggressive is definitely where you want to be. Speaking of being aggressive, we are running some DP gain in this deck. My deck profile, you saw that we are running copies of Hero. Hero is going to be a DP gain Tamer who's super helpful, super relevant. The DP inheritable, the only one I'm actually currently running is Virus Metal Greymon, which is plus 3,000 DP. That's easily the biggest of the DP gains that you're going to see. It does help you swing over 13,000 Digimon such as Machinedramon and Fighter Mode. So currently I think that 3,000 is going to be a lot more relevant than other things such as, for instance, the 2,000 DP gain Machinedramon. This is another Digimon that has been in and out of my build. He is currently not in there because I don't think he is as helpful. There's actually nothing wrong with running both of these cards. If you really are worried about DP gain and you want to be able to swing over things more consistently, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this card. I actually ran it this format. It's just currently not in my my list. Just because with Cybergmon as a Digivolve trigger, I've found that they aren't quite as necessary, and 2 copies of Hero is extra 2,000 as well. You only really need to swing over a certain cap, and with Hero and Metal Greymon, that's going to be 16,000 minimum. I mean, how much higher do you really need to climb at that point? So Machinedramon is currently not in my build, but is also a completely reasonable option. Another reasonable option that I actually haven't seen too many people run, but is super cool, I think, is Rise Greymon. Specifically Rise Greymon, the super rare from BT4. So this guy has 2 different effects, and in fact, if you are running a red base, this guy is even better for you. On your turn, he's also treated as yellow. Spoiler, doesn't actually matter. But he does have a main Digiburst effect. So this effect is you can detach 2 materials to play a red or a yellow Tamer from your hand. I have seen other Machinedramon builds that like to play TK Kari as one of their Tamers of choice. As I mentioned, I play Hero. Some people play the 4-drop Security Plus Red Tie. So if you're on a red base and you really want to help synergize with that build a little more, maybe you consider playing this Rise Greymon. He actually does have a pretty relevant inheritable that's kind of similar to Machinedramon, but instead of gaining 2,000 DP, when attacking if you have a Tamer in play, you can reduce one of your opponent's DP by 2,000. So for all intents and purposes, you are getting 2,000 when you swing over your opponent's Digimon. This is a strict upgrade, however, unless you're talking about things unaffected by that. For instance, like other Machinedramon where their DP can't be reduced. Otherwise, it's a strict upgrade in regards to the fact that it can kill things on the board. You can actually snipe rookies with that. So it's actually kind of like a neat little pseudo removal. Now, I do think that this Rise Greymon is also a little bit worse. If you're talking about doing sniping of rookies, you have better options like Metal Mamemon. You have the BT9 Machinedramon, which is a good way to do that as well. So you have other options for doing that. It's if you want to kind of roll compress. So if you want more DP gain and more removal, you can consider adding this Rise Greymon. He'll be a nice little tech option for you as well that people may not expect or see coming. And he does still synergize with that Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, getting that on-play effect as soon as he comes in, or that on-attacking effect as soon as he comes in. Before we continue talking about some of the other outside options that I have been kind of on and off, we'll talk a little bit more about the other Cyborgs that I already run. BT8 Metal Greymon, easily one of the best Cyborgs. You should be running, in my opinion, no less than 2. You can run more if you really want to. I think 2 is about right, though. You'll see it pretty consistently with all the draw power that you have. But the ability to attack unsuspended Digimon is pretty unfair. And his on-Digivolve to de-Digivolve an opponent's Digimon and then pop something, that has come up a lot. It's very good for early turn board control. It's very easy to Digivolve into him on turn 2 before they have a chance to get above the deletion effect. So that's super nice. And then we have Cybergmon, who anyone who has ever known me or seen me play this deck knows this is probably my favorite Cyborg. I think this card is super underrated. I think it is the best aggression we have at level 5. A 10,000 DP body is absolutely worth having in there. It's a great source of aggression. It is inheritable to de-Digivolve your opponent's Digimon as long as you have 2 Black Tamers in play on swing. Is stolen me so many games. So absolutely have to recommend playing at least 1. I recommend more. I play 2 personally, copies of Cybergmon. And then Megadramon is pretty basic, just security +1 inheritable, and has an on-play to pop things. Now, there is another security plus Digimon I've seen a lot of people use, and that's going to be Volcanomon. I am not super on Volcanomon right now. We have another one coming that is easily just a strict upgrade in the Justmon deck that just straight up has a security +1 inheritable. This Volcanomon only gives the +1 inheritable if your opponent has an unsuspended Digimon. The problem with that is your opponent can play around it. I don't like when the opponent is able to kind of decide how your effects work. Let's be honest with ourselves. If they are low to the ground, they're going to be swinging and not caring about your blockers. If they're higher up, there's nothing stopping them from swinging, so they're going to be doing it anyways. This is not guaranteed to be live, and it may not be live on turns when it matters the most, especially if they know it's coming. Now, it's nice to have, again, Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, where you can kind of blitz it in, and you can do 3 checks if you have both of these guys, which is super cool. But unless you have a lot of memory, you're going to be passing turn with that. You're not going to be ending the game. So more likely, you're going to be chipping in with what you have on the board, ending your turn by blitzing in the Machinedramon and trying to just clear the remaining security. Sure, if they've got 3, you've cleared the rest and could potentially end on the next turn, but I don't know. There's nothing wrong with running Volcanomon. I think a lot of people still are, and it's seeing good results. It's just not for me. I personally am not a huge fan of this card, but when the next structure deck comes out, it won't matter anymore. The new Volcanomon will replace it straight up, I think. Another good Cyborg option for you to consider is BT7 Metal Greymon. So this Digimon has an on-play effect, where if you have a Tamer in play, gain 2 memory, so it's effectively a 5 to play. It also has an effect where if you don't have a Tamer in play on play, you can play a red Tamer from your hand. So hypothetically, let's say that you're on the draw, you're going second, they pass you some memory. You can play this for 7. It'll pass them a decent amount of memory, but if you have a hero in hand, you can just straight up kind of drop that out there, and ultimately you're getting 11 memory worth for only 7. It's actually a pretty nice tempo swing, and then you're left with a nice little level 5 in play that can do more on the next turn. He also has an inheritable where on your turn, once per turn, whenever one of your opponent's Digimon is deleted, gain 1 memory. So this is... I'm having a hard time kind of describing it. It's an okay effect. I've used it in the past. Again, this is another card that's kind of gone in and out of my shell. It's not currently in there because you'll notice I've cut a lot of the cards you've probably seen in Machinedramon list before that revolve around gaining memory. There's not a whole lot that I feel like this deck lacks for memory right now. The way I have my deck set up, where I have maximum chance to trigger Kazu and have 2 memory setters, I'm going to be starting my turns on 4 or 5 memory pretty consistently. I don't really feel like I need more than that. Very rarely have I ever felt like I was really aggressively choked and desperately needed that 1 extra to get me through. Again, this is a card that a lot of people run. If you want to run it, by all means, please, give it a shot. It's not for me currently, but there are a lot of benefits to running this card, and I can absolutely see myself coming back to this card in future formats, depending on how things kind of progress and shape out. I will say, though, that you're not going to be popping things quite as much. Once EX3 comes out and the new Chaosdramon joins the deck, and it has the D-Digivolve effect instead of a destruction effect, you may see a little bit less viability. Just something to keep in mind. And the last one, which is kind of spicy. I've seen some people trying EX2 War Growlmon. Now, the on-attacking lets you delete one of your opponent's Digimon 4,000 DP or less. If you have a red Tamer, you can delete something 6,000 instead. Unless you're on red base, though, you're probably not going to be playing this to the field. It's 8 to play, which is a lot. This is a nice addition. If you do want to play red base, you can absolutely do this. And in red base, the inheritable is probably going to be more relevant. The inheritable here just adds 1,000 DP to the maximum DP you can choose when you're using DP-based deletion effects. Where that becomes irrelevant is going to be Chaosdramon. It basically means that when you are playing Chaosdramon, and you put something underneath, you get to choose things that are 7,000 DP instead of 6. That will absolutely be relevant sometimes when you need to get rid of level 5s. A lot of level 5s, in fact, you'll probably even notice, a lot of level 5s I've talked about, including all 5 of these down here, they're all 7,000 DP. A lot of level 5s can be popped with just that little bit of extra oomph in there, if you will. So it's something to consider if you want to be spicy about it. But I would recommend, if you want to go that route, try to maybe build and have other options that are DP-based as far as deletion effects. It's just something to keep in mind. It does also boost, for instance, like Megadramon's inheritable. It boosts Metal Greymon from BT8s on Digivolve effect, but that's about it. So it's something that you can think about it. It is another option. And the last Cyborg I'm going to talk about that I need to scold a few people for playing is this guy. For those of you unfamiliar, this is BT2 Metal Greymon. This is a pretty basic in-play Digimon that just has Reboot, which is kind of neat. In Reboot-centric decks, this guy is very strong, but it's inheritable. It's his inheritable that we need to talk about here. His inheritable is on your turn. While this Digimon has Reboot, it gains Security Attack +1. So everyone's like, oh, cool, so we can build a stack with Machinedramon, and it's going to put Metal Tyrannomon underneath, so it'll have Reboot, and then it gets an extra Security +1. I want you guys to check something on Metal Tyrannomon here real quick. Right here on that inheritable, you see what that says? Opponent's turn. This interaction doesn't work. Unfortunately, this Metal Greymon only gives Security +1 if you have Reboot on your own turn. Metal Tyrannomon only gives Reboot on your opponent's turn. This interaction does not work. If you decide that you want to play, I don't know, the Reboot Toyagumon as an egg, and you are planning on Digivolving into this, more power to you. I think that's a bit inconsistent and not necessarily what I'm trying to do with this deck, but hey, if you want to try that, more power to you. Just be aware that if you are playing this Metal Greymon, assuming that you are going to get a Security +1 because this is in the stack, you don't get it. It does not work. So please keep that in mind, just as a little official PSA. All right, with that, we are through all of our Cyborg talk. So we're going to go ahead and put all these guys away. And we're going to move on to talking about our Tamers. Now, Tamers are what's going to kind of keep this deck together right now. It has become a very Tamer-centric deck. Machinedramon has always run different Tamers, things like Analog Youth, who we're going to talk about here in a second. In fact, we're going to talk about a couple of different Tamers that the deck tends to run. But first, we're going to talk a little bit more about the two Tamers that I think are the best for this deck right now, and that's going to be Hero and Kazu. Now, these two Tamers are what really ties my personal build together. Hero being your memory setter of choice is what I think is the best thing to be doing. There's plenty of other memory setters that you'll see good results from. I think the +2000 on his on-swing effect is probably the most relevant, though. I've avoided using red Security +1 tie for the similar reason to the Volcanomon that I mentioned earlier. Not that it's not going to be live. You will have that live on like your Chaosdramons pretty often, and of course Machinedramon will have it on a full stack. It's that extra Security +1 is still not going to help you end the game. When you're building around Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, and you are blitzing in a Machinedramon, that one extra security check might help you clear the last security, but it's not going to end the game. There's going to be times where they only have 2 security, and that extra effect is not going to matter anymore. Now, what that means is you could, in theory, play red security tie, and when you're blitzing in Machinedramon, you can give up the Security +1 inheritable for something else. That is absolutely something to keep in mind. In fact, I do that with Hero in play, where I'll skip DP gain inheritables if I have him out already. It lets you devote those spots to other more meaningful or more impactful inheritables, which is super nice. But ultimately, you are not... I don't know. I don't think the Security +1 is going to come up as much as you're expecting it to. The Security +1 is going to be better in OTK builds, where they're trying to Digivolve into something like, for instance, BT1 War Greymon, where they're going to smash all of your security, and they're still going to have memory left to swing for game. You're not going to be able to do that when you're blitzing Machinedramon. So for those reasons, I typically avoid red tie. But we can talk about some of the other options that people do still run, at least in black base. Analog Youth is still a perfectly viable option. It's only 2 drop to play, which is super nice. And the on-play is very good for Machinedramon decks. It's reveal your top 3, you can add any Digimon you want to your hand, and you trash the remaining, so it takes through your deck. The main reason I got rid of this card is because Kazu exists now. I was running Analog Youth all the way up until EX2. The second EX2 hit and Kazu came out, bye-bye. No more Analog Youth. I'm done with that card for the foreseeable future. What this card does, yes, you will see more cards immediately than Kazu. Kazu will accrue you way more value in the long run. Analog Youth, checking 3 cards is fine. You can add any Digimon, so you can add a rookie or a champion if you need to.
You're, of course, probably still going to want to trash your ultimates, but there will be times where you may want to add an ultimate. All of that is fine. You're still going to draw cards off of Kazu, though. He's still going to help you filter through your deck. The other effective Analog Youth can come up maybe once in a blue moon, where all turns, if you have a level 5 or higher Digimon with Digivolution cards and it is deleted, you can suspend this Tamer to gain a memory and hatch an egg. So let's say that you were to have your egg in raising, you've got a champion, you promote, already have the analog in play, you Digivolve into an ultimate, you swing in, get your awesome inheritables, you check security, and your ultimate level dies. Well, then you'd be able to gain a memory, hatch a new egg, and potentially start to rebuild a stack, which is not a bad line to go at all. Again, it's one of those things where I just think there's better things we can be doing right now. I think Analog Youth is a phenomenal card, but I think Kazu just does its job better. I think his memory gain is going to be stronger. I think his digging is going to be stronger. So for those reasons, I'm currently off Analog Youth, but again, more power to you. Sculpt your deck however you want and let me know how it goes. I'm not in any way trying to dump on Analog Youth. I still think it's a great card. It's just not what I'm currently running, and those are the reasons as to why. The other card that you will also see, and I ran up until very recently, was Memory Setter Black Tie, which has very basic effects. If you have less than 3 memory at the start of your turn, set it to 3, and on your opponent's turn, your Black Digimon get plus 1,000 DP. There are still great interactions this card allows. One of the more notable is it lets your Guardiamons get over, or I should say, stay over the 6,000 DP threshold that a lot of Digimon care about. One of the most important ones right now being Paildramon. Imperial Dramon is still very popular. It has the Paildramon, when it DNA Digivolves, can tuck something 6,000 DP or less. So if you're sitting on a Guardiamon and they didn't DNA Digivolve up, they can tuck your blocker away, and it's obviously unfortunate for you, but what can you do? Having Tai Kamiya in play is going to help Guardiamon get to that 7,000 threshold where it's able to stay above that. There are a couple of other relevant 6,000 DP threshold effects out there. And also buffing your Machinedramon up a little bit extra can help trade. 12,000 is very common for level 6s to have, so it'll help your Machinedramons block and trade 2 sources for one of their mega level stacks. I'm not currently running Black Tie for the exact same reason I have mentioned all of my other reasons for playing a more offensive build. I think offensive is just the way to go right now. I have absolutely no trouble when I have Machinedramon at only 11,000 DP, blocking it, getting rid of 2 inheritables, and just letting them stick around. I'm fine with that happening. Machinedramon takes so many resources to get rid of that you can continue to progress your board state even if they are trying to donate the resources to remove him. Black Tie does make him easier to keep around, but there's still going to be plenty of times where that 1,000 DP just doesn't matter. Chaos Dramon, for instance, if you're having a Chaos Dramon blocker stack, he doesn't benefit from it. That's something that he doesn't get. One of the nice benefits of Hero is he doesn't really care about color. Anything that is level 5 or above gets the 2,000 buff if you want to suspend him when the attack happens. So helping the cards in your deck have the most synergy with the most other cards in your deck, that's really where my mindset has been with my most recent Machinedramon build. Again, prior to this format, and even at the start of this format, I was actually running 1 Hero and 1 Black Tie. I swapped the Black Tie out for a second copy of Hero because I found it more effective for me. But you're welcome, as always. Try it out, see what works, see what doesn't. If you really get a lot of good use out of Black Tie, maybe you want to play a more defensive black build with more blockers. Not EX2 Guardiamon, of course, but other blockers. Maybe play more copies of Tie. That DP gain can add up if you have multiple in play at one time. So, I don't know. Try it out. Let me know how it goes. But with that, we're going to... There are some other Tamers you can potentially try. As I mentioned, Yellow TK Kari gives you 2 memory if you have less security than your opponent. There's also Black Izzy Joe. If your opponent has 2 Digimon in play at the start of their turn, or at the start of your turn, gain 2 memory. They're fine. I've kind of tried each one of those at different times. They're currently not in here just because I think 6 Tamers is already plenty. I think it's been just the right amount. I see them right when I want to, but I don't often get flooded on them. So 6 Tamers is where I like to be personally. If you want to run more Tamers, or if you want to run less Kazu, less Hero, those are other options you can try. They're perfectly fine. Like I said, they're just not for me in this moment in time, and that's completely fine. Everyone's different. But moving right along, we're going to talk about option cards, because there's actually a surprising number of option cards Machinedramon decks can run that will help you out in different situations. And this is another place where I see a lot of variability between different builds. To begin with, a notable exclusion from my deck is Ultimate Connection. I've been running this card at 4 copies, or minimum 3 copies, I should say, since EX1's release, because this has always been one of Machinedramon's best synergy pieces. Basically, it's a 1-drop option where you can discard a level 5 Cyborg from your hand to draw 1 card and gain 2 memory. So basically, it's like a Hammer Spark. You're paying 1, but you're gaining 2 back. And you do draw a card off of it. The problem with this card that I mentioned briefly in my deck profile, it only works with level 5 Cyborgs. The card doesn't actually do a whole lot if you don't have a Cyborg in hand. And don't get me wrong, I'm running 15 Cyborgs. There's a good chance you're going to see one, but I don't like pigeonholing myself into needing it in my hand for this card to actually do literally anything. There were games I've played before where this card has literally sat in my hand and done nothing because I just didn't have the Cyborg. Either I've crashed them all already, they were in security, they were digivolved into. It really does force you to kind of play around the potential of having this card. Because if you check it in security, it still has that same effect where you discard to gain 2 memory. And yes, there are going to be games where you have the nuts and they're at 1 memory. They check that Ultimate Connection in security. You flip over the card, you drop your Cyborg, and now it's your turn because they just lost that memory. It's going to happen. It's going to feel good when it does. But I think I can count on one hand the number of times that's actually been relevant. A lot of the time, attacks are happening at the start of an opponent's turn. There could be memory setters in play. That 2 memory just doesn't end up being a whole heck of a lot, and gaining an extra memory on your turn is not as necessary as it used to be, again, because of Kazu. Kazu really does help us not get starved for memory. There have been games where you get multiple Kazus in play with your memory setter, and you're starting, 4, 5, 6 memory every single turn. You don't need to go up to, 5, 6, 7, 8 memory every turn. It's just not necessary. It's a bit win more, I think, nowadays, and just because it is a little more specific in the cards it needs in order to do stuff, I currently do not run it. Again, plenty of decks still do. If you decide that you want to go that route, by all means, more power to you. But the option that it literally swapped in for, before BT9 came out, I was running 3 Ultimate Connection. When BT9 came out, all 3 came out and became copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. This is the card that fixes a big problem Machinedramon has always had. Machinedramon's biggest weakness is going to be things like bounce effects that are going to get rid of it without its protections, its inability to lose DP and be able to detach to prevent destruction. Things that get around that have always been a big problem. Bounce effects, Megadeth is everywhere right now. A lot of people were saying that when Megadeth came out, it was going to be the end of Machinedramon. Well, spoiler, it wasn't. And this card is one of the big reasons why. Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon lets you pitch any machine or cyborg from your hand. Again, a lot more diverse and open than Ultimate Connection, to blitz in your Machinedramons when you play them. So as long as you have 2 memory and you can play it from your hand, you'll probably gain your memory back. So choking them at whatever the number may be. If you're starting at 2, put them at a 5, which is a lot, but again, you can end the game this way. Blitzing in and being able to proc all of your incredible on-play or on-attack inheritables can be just absolutely nuts. So let's say it's later in the game, you do this, and your swing involves Cyberdramon, Metal Greymon, let's go with, Piercing, we'll give that, we get Metal Mamemon to pop something. All of these inheritables, they just, oh my goodness, they just snowball. You'll get these bonkers turns that aren't even that inconsistent, where you just swing in with all of these inheritables all at a single time, and you get them out of nowhere before you pass turn. And more than likely, your Machinedramon will have block or reboot inheritables. So not only do you swing in and pop something, attack an unsuspended and pierce through for a security check, de-digivolve something they have in play. All of these effects happen, and then you get to restand and have a blocker with destruction immunity on their turn. It's so crazy. This card is absolutely bonkers. It is wild, the kind of plays that this alone provides this deck. This, in my opinion, is the reason that this deck is starting to become a little bit more relevant. If people really start to try to build around this and Kazu, I think the sky's the limit for Machinedramon decks. It also does have a security effect that I failed to mention in my deck building profile. If you check it, you can trash any cyborg or machine from your hand, again, any cyborg or machine, to delete one of your opponent's Digimon that has a play cost less than or equal to the trashed card's play cost, which is super cool. So basically means if you have, high cost, like 8 or 7 ultimates, or you have a mega level in your hand, or as I mentioned, I'm playing 2 copies of Death Exmon, those things you can literally just drop to wipe whatever you want off the board. It's so cool. Being able to do that is super duper relevant. I'm remembering now, I think when I was at my event on Monday, that store championship, and was talking to people, I think it was under the misinterpretation that the effect was discard something to pop something with the same level. That is not the case. It's actually more diverse than that. Anything that has a lesser play cost than the machine or cyborg you discard is going to get destroyed. So that's going to be 12 on any of our megas. It's literally any Digimon in the game if you decide, no, you can't drop Dexmon. My apologies, it's not a cyborg. As I mentioned, it's the only one in the deck. So basically, if you have a mega, you can pop anything 12 cost or less, which is borderline Gaia Force. So this card is super, super cool. Definitely recommend running quite a few copies. Like I said, I'm running 3. It's actually the only option card I am currently running in Machinedramon, but you're missing out. If you're not building around Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, you are absolutely missing out. Some other options that I've heard some people actually suggest, and other things I do run, Ultimate Flare is a great removal spell. I think it's still currently Black's best removal spell. You can do Iron Fist and Onslaught as well, but I think the D-Digivolve is pretty relevant right now. I actually side 3 copies of Ultimate Flare. I don't have any in my main, but I know some people do main it. So that's really great as removal. I think it's a bit redundant if you are playing Attack, but again, you need less requirements in order to do the removal, so up to you. But this is actually an idea that I've heard a couple of different people suggest, and I want to kind of bring it up to you guys because I want to see someone try it, and I want to see someone do well with it. And that is plug-in cards. Specifically, these 2 are the ones that we want to be trying to run in Machinedramon, the red one and the green one. Both of these have an effect where if you have a Tamer in play, you may play them without meeting their color requirements. So as long as you have a Kazu or a hero, you can always play these cards. You don't have to worry about what color they are. And they each have some pretty cool effects. So the red one is just straight up 2 memory to give one of your Digimon +1 security attack. Super, super neat. The green one says to draw 1 when you first play it. Then you may Digivolve one of your Digimon into a Digimon card in your hand that can Digivolve for a Digivolution cost of 3 or less without paying its Digivolution cost. So basically, it's going to draw a card to replace itself. And then anything in your deck that can Digivolve for 3 or less, you may Digivolve up without paying that memory cost. So you're going to make your 3 costs at least a memory cheaper while also replacing itself. I'm not quite as high on this one. I think it's a neat idea. I would love to see if anyone can actually do something cool and make that card worth it. I personally don't think it's really worth a slot right now. I think the deck that I'm currently running is pretty tight on the space. But yeah, give it a try. See if you can do something with it. More power to you if you do. But yeah, with that is all of the cards that I want to talk about. I know this video has run quite long. If you're still with me, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you have enjoyed yourself. This has been a very, very deep dive into Machinedramon, specifically Black Base, as well as the other options that you can do to make a Machinedramon deck work. If that's all you were here for, by all means, you're welcome to click away. I am, however, going to, just as a quick closing thing, I'm going to demonstrate for you guys a couple of practice hands so you guys can get an idea for the mindset that I'm in when I'm playing this deck. I think just seeing what you do with your first couple of turns can be extremely beneficial. So I'm just going to shuffle up here for a moment. I'm going to show what the security would be for that particular hand. Obviously, you're not going to know your security at the start of the game, but one of the things I've also kind of picked up on as Machinedramon, as I've kind of played more and kind of seen what the deck does, how it plays, what it wants, letting your opponent get in a few early checks. Obviously, if they're just trying to, swing in, and you have a Guardramon in play and they're swinging with something 7,000 DP, don't sacrifice your Guardramon to it. Basically, what I'm saying is if you're deciding between losing an early security and losing an early body, let them check the security. There's a good chance they're going to end up revealing Cyborgs that will then go to your trash. They could easily reveal Tamers, which are going to boost your memory efficiency when it switches back to your turn. I've had situations where I've had a Guardramon in play or a Commandramon in play. They've checked a Kazu, and they had another attacker. I can just block with the blocker on the second attacker. Then I can activate Kazu's effect because it's on either turn. and you just get a ton of value out of it. So just something to think about. Be aware that there are going to be decks that can kill you out of nowhere if you're not careful, so you don't want to be too low on security at any given point in time. But this deck does excel at board control very well, and losing a couple of security early on can actually help boost your playability and the resources that you see early on super, super well. So just something to think about. All right, so for this particular hand, our security, we've got Guru, we've got Cyberdragon, Attack of the Heavy Mobile, super great. All right, so our security this game would end up giving us 2 different Cyborgs and have spot removal, so that's pretty solid opening security. We're now going to see what our first hand is going to be. We've got a Cyborg, a Machinedramon, a Gurumon, and Tankmon. Right off the bat, this is a snap keep for me. I am 100% on this hand. I think this hand is phenomenal. So, let's say, to begin with, we're on the play. So if we're going first, so a lesson to learn about this particular Hagurumon, because I do think this is an important lesson. The on-play is phenomenal, but in black base, it's just fine if you want to go ahead and Digivolve this into your raising. So we Digivolve in, draw a card, another Tankmon, not bad, not bad. Right off the bat, we can go ahead and Digivolve for 1. We pass them a single memory, and they are going to be needing to figure out what to do with their next turn. When the turn gets back to us, this is a situation where I think I am comfortable just going ahead and raising up. We've drawn into another rookie, so super cool. On the turn after, we'll be able to make use of that. For this particular turn, though, we've drawn, oh my goodness, right off the top, we have ripped EX1 Andromon. So if your opponent has done something, if they've played a lower level Digimon that you want to get rid of, this is a nice time where you can already go into your BT8 Metal Greymon, you can Digivolve and pop something. Or I think the more generically good play is right off the bat on turn 2, we are playing EX1 Andromon. We reveal our top 3. We just added a Chaosdramon to our hand and trashed 2 new Cyborgs that are now sitting in our trash. That is just absurd value. So this is only on turn 2. You can take a look at the setup we now have. We have 3 more Cyborgs still sitting in our hand, which we can Digivolve up into thanks to our Commandramon and Tankmon next turn. We already have Machinedramon, which we can drop. We've already got 5 unique inheritables showing. And next turn, we can also go into Chaosdramon. This is where it's going to start depending. This is why I'm only going to show you the first turn. Going into Chaosdramon, depending on what your opponent does, you can just wipe their board, and then you have a blocker in play with any other inheritable that you really want at this point. So this is even without seeing Kazu. This is an amazing starting hand. This is absolutely where you want to be with this deck, and you can already see just on turn 2 how quickly this deck does grind through value, grind through advantage. So that was a phenomenal start. We're going to do another one, see if we can get a good start like that again. I'm not going to bother shuffling up the eggs just because it doesn't really matter. We're going to be seeing our Hotmons most of the time anyway, so we're going to leave them out there and just assume that that's what we're using. If we do happen to see a Kazu in opening hand, that plus 1,000 DP is gonna be a benefit to us. Pokemon is also just fine. You can honestly swing with even lower level Digimon if you do hit Pokemon just to get that on deletion effect, or just keep doing what you're doing, Digivolve up to level 5, try to keep it around. This is kind of where I mentioned before, this deck really does reward the skill of the pilot. Learning how to make decisions, when to be aggressive, when to hold back, what kind of hands to keep, all of that really does kind of weigh in. At the end of the day, this is a deck that you really need to play for a little while and kind of get good at realizing what situations you're in and when you want certain things. So, again, just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle up. We're just going to do one more test hand, just to kind of see how it goes. See if we can get another solid start like that. So we're going to go ahead and reveal our security. We've got Tankmon, Metal Tyrannomon, a Cyborg, awesome. We've got Metal Greymon, awesome. Another Tankmon, and another Metal Greymon. Okay, so we've got some Cyborgs in the security again. Again, it can be nice to get those early checks in and let some early Cyborgs go to your trash. Super cool. Now for our hand, we have Machinedramon, love to see it. Chaosdramon, all right. We got Metal Tyrannomon, Attack, and Commandramon. All right, this is a little more questionable of a hand. I would think I would absolutely go ahead and mulligan this. For those of you who don't already know, the rules for Digimon Mulligan, you're just putting those 5 on the bottom. We're going to draw another 5 and see if we get a good keep here. So we've got Metal Greymon, another Machinedramon, Hagurumon, Metal Tyrannomon, and another Commandramon. All right, it's not a phenomenal hand, admittedly, but this hand is absolutely serviceable. So what we're going to want to do here, let's again assume that we're on the play, so we do not have an additional card to look at. So the good news is we already have a draw, so we can go ahead and play Commandramon, get a draw. All right, we did not hit a champion level Digimon, so bridging the gap is going to be a little tricky, but the good news is we do not have to pass a ton of memory thanks to our 2-drop Hagurumon. So we play Commandramon, hard play Hagurumon, we pass our opponent 2 memory. So when the turn does come back to us, we would go ahead and promote Commandramon. We're going to draw for our turn. Would you look at that? There we are. We've gotten our champion. Look, obviously, there's going to be hands where this is not going to happen. You are going to brick. The reality of the situation that you need to make peace with if you're going to play Machinedramon is there's going to be games where you do just get Cyborgs and Megas, and you're not going to be able to do a whole lot other than just hard playing the Ultimates. I've lost a lot of games and events doing that. It sucks. The best thing I can just suggest is build a deck, or build your deck in such a way that you are going to minimize that from happening. Kazu can help unbrick these hands tremendously well. If you just open with a couple rookies and Kazu, you can usually dig your way out of it very quickly. But if we do want to go back to this hand, again, we can just go ahead and Digivolve up. I think I'm going to choose to Digivolve on Guardiamon this particular turn. Let's say that they pass 2 memory. We already have 2 EX1 ultimates that we can then Digivolve on top of and get our on Digivolve effects. So let's say that they did pass us 2, so we went to 2 went to 0. We'll Digivolve up. I'm going to use Metal Mamemon as my particular choice here. So we'll draw for Evolution. Saw a Kazu. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Reveal our top 3, 2, 3. Okay, that's an unfortunate search. We lost 2 attacks and we lost a Haguru, but that's okay. Seeing that Kazu is honestly plenty for me. When the turn passes back to us, we have options already. We can play that Kazu and just pass back. But most importantly, when the turn comes back to us, we now have that Guardiamon inheritable. So on our next turn, before we do anything else, we can swing. We can discard any of the cards from our hand that we want. Draw 2 new cards. There you go. You're officially unbricked. You've already gotten a new Haguru, a new Guardiamon. You're ready to go. All right, guys, that's going to about do it for this video. I know that this has been a very long one. If you stuck with it this long, I guess you're a Machinedramon enthusiast like me, and you wanted to hear my thoughts. I really do appreciate you sticking around. It helps my viewer retention, so thank you for that. I'm going to be trying to post more videos similar to this, going over other deck lists that I'm looking forward to posting, as well as more in-depth dives if people are interested in learning more about the decks that I play. I also not only play Digimon, I'm a big player for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering, so I'm hoping to do some content for those games as well. With that, guys, I am an avid herpetologist. Thank you all so much for stopping by. If you like the content, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.